these different things that you've taught me, frankly, that nobody understands. All the subtleties that go into this. And so that's probably the mission of my side. And I know it's been yours, is to make people aware of this, because in the end, the more that you're aware of all of these things that go on behind the scenes of discovering, whatever the price they foist upon you, all of that factors into an understanding of how the thing is manipulated and how false the price actually is. And that's the word we've got to, we've spent 10 years trying to get out.
Well, and I think with a great deal of success, and you have a lot of people that religiously come to you, hundreds of thousands of people come to you on a monthly basis. And I think I was kind of jesting about the physical spoof, because there's nothing illegal about what we're talking about here. We're talking about
right.
You and many of us all trying to educate people into saying, look, exactly what you just said. Look, this is a paper market, guys. Don't you look at that price. It's not the price. The price is not that price. So look, just go out, buy, stack, go take advantage of a dip. Yeah, we're going to see some market manipulation. We see it on a monthly basis. We see it into every Fed event. We see it, as you so many times have pointed out, when you come to a nice moving average or something and you see some bid pulling going on. I mean, but what you've done there is, instead of people running for the hills, which is really what the COMEX was at the very beginning designed for in 1974, it was like, we have 50 years of create massive volatility, dilute the price. People will run for the hills. But what you've done is say, no, guys, buy that physical stack. Keep buying the physical stack. We will win this war. And that's exactly what you're doing.
Well, it's always important to know, Andy. A lot of people hear this idea that price rigging, price manipulation is some sort of conspiracy theory. It's not. It's historical fact. And anybody willing to actually take the time to educate themselves, like I did, can figure this out. Coming out of Bretton Woods in World War II, the US dollar was backed by gold and redeemable for gold. Well, by the late 1950s, this became quite a scandal, because the stash of gold that the U.S. had when this all began after Bretton Woods in World War II had been depleted by about a third. As the European countries rebuilt and they began trade in dollars, and then they began to store up dollars in their foreign capital or foreign reserves, capital reserves, they converted it back to gold. Who could blame them? Well, all of a sudden the U.S. lost about a third of their gold, and there was, all this hearings on Capitol Hill. Is quite the scandal. So then over the next 10 years, the U.S. said, well, we're not going to go it alone in defending the price and supplying the gold. So they worked up what's called the London Gold Pool, where in cooperation with 7 other countries, they all pledged physical gold to dump some on the market if price rose, buy some back when price fell back, all to peg the price. That's manipulation right there. They're pegging the price by manipulating it, by supplying metal and withdrawing metal. Well, that worked until it didn't in 1968. So now all of a sudden everybody's going alone. Nixon has to close the gold window and suspend the convertibility of the dollar in 71. Gold begins to skyrocket. And now all of a sudden there's a real shortage. And so what do? Like you said, in 1974, they kicked up the idea of gold futures, which began trading on January 1, 1975. And we know now from WikiLeaks documents that gold futures were actually designed to make the market volatile. Not only supply synthetic pretend gold to meet the demand for actual gold, it's a sort of alchemy, but also to make it volatile enough that regular investors said, to hell with that. I don't want anything to do with that. That, it goes up and down all the time. That's not what I want. And this alchemy now has been extended to the point, as you've written, to where there are as many as maybe 100 owners for each physical ounce in the world, because these banks and these mints, which we should talk about, some are now getting called to the carpet for their unallocated accounts, have taken 1 ounce and sold it to 50 different people, sometimes 100. And so what's eventually going to happen, and this is why we want so badly for people to acquire physical metal, because every ounce of metal that you buy and remove from the market by storing it yourself, or maybe some trusted bullion dealer or something. Just get it out of the hands of the banks, because every ounce you take away from the banks reduces their ability to further leverage things and kind of tightens the vice on them. And that's the mission. Again, that this whole pricing scheme, and it is a scheme, is a fractional reserve scheme, just like your local bank runs. And just like a bank run, where everybody shows up at once wanting their deposits back from the bank, we need to inspire a run on these bullion banks, where everybody shows up at the same time wanting their physical metal. And at that point, the system collapses. And at that point, price actually resets to a value that is representative of how much physical metal there really is, not all this phony baloney, derivative and ETF garbage.